Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you had a great lunch, and please stay awake after the lunch, right? My name is Teresa, and I'll be talking about DevOps, but for Frontend project. So I work in JP Morgan, mostly on the platform team, and through recent year, I've been mostly working in fintech, and also I did a lot of work in the infrastructure world, but mostly for front-end project. And besides work, I'm also an international public speaker. I talk a lot on stage and in life as well. I like to share good things we do in our project and also how we fail. So today I'm going to share with you our journeys of how we automate things in our project in a Chase UK product. You might be our customer already. If you're not, Chase UK was launched 3 years ago. It's a fully, it's shared the same branding with the Chase US app, but we actually build a lot of things from scratch, including our front-end project code, the architecture, and all the infrastructure code behind the scene. So I'm going to walk you through the journey, but highlight how we actually automated our project up to today. So let's begin. Right, as I mentioned, I'm going to walk you through a bit of detail of things we've done, give a very high level of DevOps, walk you through our pipeline design and architecture of our project, front-end project, and how we actually use all this to improve our release process. Because front-end project, it works very differently from cloud project, from back-end project. Do we have any front-end engineer here? Just curious. No? Great. So you're in a very good place. That means after today, you will be able to actually provide some useful information for your front-end team of how to actually accelerate the release process in your front-end project. Because that was one of the very, very pain point in front-end project of how to actually release quicker and deliver quicker as well. And you will see why we have this pain point. And I have only 30 minutes, so I will probably go a bit quicker on some of the slides. For example, this one, because if everyone comes from DevOps background, just in case, you might actually know this story already. But everything started in 2007, and through the year, up to the year of 2011, the word of DevOps is finally become a thing, a job, a role. And you can say, right, it's been actually a few years of from discussion until the time this DevOps becomes a real word. Right. Again, very quickly, as I assume everyone comes from DevOps background. You know your role, right? You are there to improve the culture, the collaboration, automation, how to make things deliver continuously, lean code, and bring Agile in. Because actually, Agile and the front DevOps work very closely together. DevOps is kind of a branch of Agile. Actually, they complete each other in a way. I can say that, let's say, DevOps is probably how Agile can be implemented in your project. So I took this picture from Google. I actually studied one of their very nice textbook about DevOps and the pipeline. And you don't have to read this in detail, because this is how they suggest of the cloud build can be implemented in their GCP platform. But to make this in a very overall highlight view, the pipeline for most of the project, right? Doesn't matter if it's for front-end and for back-end. It all starts from getting the source code from either GitHub, Bitbucket, right, from your repository, and run your cloud build, have your image pushed to a container, and have everything tested, and then it will push to the end user. It looks very simple and straightforward, but underneath the hood, it's probably not be the case. What's the role of DevOps for front-end project? Right, so as for myself, I work in the infrastructure team and mostly building the pipeline solutions for our project. I'm not the only person doing that. Right? We have a team of engineers looking after this automation. And for us building a pipeline for our project, we don't have to look after the containers from the cloud engineering side. This is looking after from the cloud engineering team, but we look after the connections underneath the hood, how things runs, right? Mostly the script of this pipeline. We set up the configuration. We make sure things can be automated from build to test. And we configure the bundle tools and the modular tools. We patch the app, make a version, and look after the infrastructure of that management. And in the end, we actually release application, right? If it's like, for example, Chase is a mobile application, we deploy it automatically to various Play Store. And we do performance monitoring and get feedback from our user. This whole process is looking after by the whole pipeline infrastructure. And on high-level view, what do we do here? Again, we get the code, right? And we go through the continuous testing process. Testing for front-end project is very different from back-end project. Because of the integration with the UI, some of the tests can be very expensive and take a long time to run. So we will have different ways to differentiate our pipeline, which I will talk a bit more in detail. And it goes through the release, deploy, and monitor process, and everything runs as in a loop, but with iteration on each cycle. So this is what we do, a bit more detail of what happens in a Chase application. So we have different repository, right? We get the code from our Git repository. And we have the webhook to connect our code with the CI/CD tool. So we are using Jenkins at the moment, and we are about to move on to a different platform. So we're in the process of transfer the whole pipeline to a new platform. Also maintain the current system to work. And we use multi-branch pipeline, and we have jobs that runs on schedule in parallel, and also on demand as well. That means you can trigger or kick any job at any time when you want. Then this build is uploaded to a Docker image or artifacts. This then will be sent to a testing team in our source lab. Because of the front-end project, we need to be tested thoroughly. So we have to test it basically end-to-end. Then the test result will be notified via email and notification. Either it's green or red. This will become a loop, right? Like we'll do the same thing every time when people want to commit the code for integration, and before we release the application. But we do them differently. And before that, I'm going to just quickly introduce some of the tools you can choose for your front-end project as CI/CD tool. Like for us, we maintain a lot of things ourselves in-house using Jenkins. And depends on how your team is set up, right? If you have a very good infrastructure team who can look after the whole pipeline for you, you can build everything in-house, or you can use the existing tools like CircleCI, GitLab, Action, BRise, CodeMagic, right, to actually build your pipeline solution for you. They have lots of nice integrations. That means you don't have to build everything from scratch. So, right, how to choose your tool, right? Think about the cost, the integration, how secure it is, can it be scalable, and can you actually migrate from the current platform to a new platform? Like us, we're in the process of migration. And can you host them locally or on cloud? Those are, for me, key points to consider when you decide which tool to use. Right, so as I was mentioning, the process of our pipeline looks very much the same on the paper, but underneath the hood, we do have different pipelines, right? And those are 4 types that we use, and this one is actually introduced by Google, and we're following their very good practice. So we have integration pipeline, and we have full pipeline, we have release and deployment. Deployment is actually very close, right? The idea of deployment is because, again, this is for front-end project, right? We don't want anyone to have access to our Play Store, and the deployment pipeline is very highly secured. Not everyone have access to it, right? We trigger it by a service, and because we have a separate release pipeline that runs all the tests, then deployment becomes a lot easier. And in my next 10-15 minutes, I'm going to walk you through of each of the type and what we can do and what we shouldn't do and what we did wrong in those steps. And so you can actually take our what we know. Hopefully that can help you to build your project. So, right, the challenge with CI/CD, right, our pipeline is that sometimes it's taking too long to run. Do we build fail fast, or we don't do fail fast? And what test to run in which type of the pipeline? And how do we do caching properly? And our notifications of a build failure is always ignored, right? Those are our pain points. And challenge in a front-end project, right? Again, what to test, and most importantly, what not to test at what stage. For example, when I create a pull request, that will trigger a pipeline to run. What test should I include in my PR test, and what I shouldn't include, right? Do I do unit tests, integration, end-to-end in my PR? Depends on how much time they take. And we have long-lived release branch, and we have delayed release cycle, and it taking too long to merge a PR. And also dependencies and errors, right, which we don't have everything being detected and being learned. So our project architecture looks like this one, right? So do we use monorepo? Is your project monolith? Do we use micro frontend? Is your project multi-platform? Do you have like iOS, web, and Android application? What's your testing strategy? How do you release? And what is your branching strategy? Right. So let's talk about integration, right? So this means when a developer create a feature, added some function, and he or she want to merge this change to the main branch, right? You might use trunk-based development. You might use Git flow, right? So ideally, this integration pipeline should run within 30 minutes. But in real world, it takes 60 minutes or even longer because we might have to run everything from scratch. We don't cache things properly, and we do too many tests, which are not necessary. Things we can actually do here to improve our PR pipeline is one of the things that you need to think about is a branching strategy and what it means, right? So for backend project, it's actually very easy to use trunk-based because every time when you make a commit, this go to your main trunk, and the code, after some tests, it can be releasable. But for front-end project, we found that this one is quite difficult because we have release process that has to go through the App Store. And if things went wrong, we have to do hotfix. And we also have engineer teams of like 10 teams. Each team has 5-6 engineers. Everyone is commit to develop branch, and something might break. So we are actually, now we are in the middle, somewhere between Git flow, because we found Git flow is quite heavy for us, but we can't go to trunk just yet. So we're in a scale trunk where people can have a feature branch and release branch, and then everything is merged back to the main branch. And as I was mentioning, testing strategy can actually have a huge impact on your pipeline of how long it runs, and think about what you want to test, in which stage, and what you don't want to test. So ideally, we should do, for example, BDD, TDD, and think about the testing pyramid, right? The heaviest testing on the top, just keep them simple. Do a full unit test when you migrate your code to the main branch. And think about whether or not you should add integration test. That's like your test that you actually interact with a user journey. the lesson we learned that is we will keep end-to-end test apart from merging your code to your main branch, because end-to-end test is quite heavy and it does take an hour or even two to run with the full pipeline. So a PR pipeline, this is what we have, right? So we get the code and we set up configuration. This would take about 2-3 minutes. And we run the code analysis, the lint check, type check to make sure everything is fine. And this will be run in parallel for different platforms. And we do the security check for validation to make sure the code we submit is safe to use, that we don't leak any information we shouldn't. And then we do unit test. We do a smoke level of integration tests to make sure the code we submit doesn't break existing functions on a very high level. And very importantly here, we test our test coverage, but only on the code that has a code difference. We don't run the code with the entire project. We get the code difference between the head and the develop. We check the test coverage on the code you want to submit. See if you have a standard coverage for the functions you're providing, comparing to our a great test threshold. This can be 80%, 90%, right? And if that fail, the test threshold, we will either fail the pipeline or give a warning. This one makes sure that we have a healthy code base and everyone is keep to the same standard. And yeah, I was saying do some smoke tests, and then we will allow the code to be merged. Full pipeline. So full pipeline is actually quite interesting because I do see projects that the full pipeline and integration is very mixed. They don't have a separation between full and integration. The reason for here is because they run in too much tests. They don't have to, which taking too long, especially for front-end project. A full pipeline might take over an hour. Imagine how painful it is for engineer to wait for an hour before I can merge my pull request. Right, sometimes it takes 2 hours. Right, so here as in full pipeline, what we do is you can either run them during the day, right, not on each PR level, or run them in the evening when things are more quiet. It doesn't occupy too much resources. Again, it depends on how you set up your structure. And for full pipeline, few things that can impact on your strategy here. Is your project a monorepo, or do you have a multi-repo? How many repositories you have, and where do you grab your code from? And again, right, how modularized is your project? One of the things that we did is to use the power of caching. That means our project follows the structure of microservices, like everything runs on a modular base. And we cache things that we build once. So I will talk a bit more about caching later on, but we do actually leverage the power of caching in our project, and our project is not a monolith. Actually, it's quite modularized in a way, very clean architecture. So actually, we can run a full pipeline using the power of caching and to reduce the time of each build. Right. Is your front-end project multi-platform? Do you only support web? Do you support a mobile as well, or do you do like desktop? Do you use a game? Do you use support different type of desktop, or do you even use embedded? This again will impact on the design of your pipeline. Right. So the full pipeline design, as in the architecture level, is very, very similar with your integration. The only difference here, from my view, is how many tests you run in this pipeline, and how do you use a cache or not. This will impact the time of your pipeline, and think about when do you need to run it, right? So this can be also same as what you do with release. And Release pipeline and the full pipeline, they are actually very much connected in a way that we run similar tests in release pipeline, but on different environment. I'm sure in your project you have debug environment, you have QA, maybe you have production, you have staging, right? So the difference between release pipeline is how you test your API. Right. The level of test you run in release should be similar to what you're doing full, but on different environment. And you can actually switch this, automate this process at the time when you trigger your pipeline. Or you can run in release more than one environment. And this will be then a design of how you do your tests of your API. Do you do like API test and a contract test, for example, right? This can be associated in your release pipeline. Again, few things that will have impact on your design of release pipeline is your release management. What is the process of your release? And this can again be automated in your structure of the pipeline. How often do you release and deploy? Like for example, we can release every day, but we only deploy once at every end of the sprint. Right. How do you do hotfix, and how do you do like scheduling, monitoring, all that, right? Release management can be part of your design of your infrastructure. So I will touch a little bit more on micro frontend. As I was saying, we are actually very much modularized, following the structure of microservices. Each of our module doesn't have circle dependency now. To begin with, we do. That means we have like 80 modules right in the project. And the module A will have dependency with module B, while module B have dependencies with module C, but then C is also connected to module A. So if you draw a dependency tree of your project, the arrow looks like it is going down and go up. That means your project have circle dependency. And because of that, even though you have different modules in your project is still a monolith. That means you can release each module by version, because everything is connected as a circle. With micro frontend style, everything should be very clean in a way that you can have dependencies, but if you draw the dependency tree, the arrow should just go one direction, either up or down, right? Not in both directions, right? And because of that, what we can do now is, for example, we have a share package, like 30 or 40 of them. We have a feature package, which is a very independent node, like if you think about this as a tree. So every time when someone change code in the feature package, this can be individually versioned and published. Or same for share package, it can be individually published, versioned for other team to consume as a library. And the beauty is that they actually reduced our time to release our project when there's an error, because you can choose a version you want to use, or even go back to a previous version. And so you don't have to fix bugs on a very short time scale. You can either ignore it and fix on the side, so your team can move on, right? You don't have to wait for one team to fix one issue, so everyone else have to, wait, right? So caching, this is actually very, very interesting. We actually spend enough time think about how we do caching properly. So to give a bit of overview of what we do. So, for example, we have 80 modules, right? When we run tests for those modules, every test result is hashed. And if someone submits a code, we work out the dependency of this code and what other module depending on it. So like a chain of effect, every module that has dependency of your module, the cache will be invalid. But we keep cache of the test result for those things are very separated. So when we run our tests, run our pipeline, we only rerun those packages that their cache is invalid. So that's, again, a high-level view of how the caching system works. Because of this, right, we can do a micro release. I don't know if I'm running out of time. Okay, I'm going to talk about a bit on release. How can we enhance release cycle? Right. You can do your full pipeline during the day, but you also can do that in an evening. So that means you actually use the full power of all your resources, right? We separate release and deployment pipeline. So we want to deploy, we just deploy, right, very quickly. And think about how you can actually make your tests outside your project, especially end-to-end tests where you have to connect with device, emulator. Those are very slow and very heavy. And we can actually, again, right, deploy very frequently, using the power of having separate pipeline, having different version, having a micro front-end strategy, having things very much modularized. So release pipeline looks like this, right? You get a code here. Additional step is we have the bump version for package we want to release, do the other tests, and we will publish the package to artifacts for other teams to consume as a library. So deploy, very simple. Here, this pipeline is protected. You shouldn't allow everyone to have access, right? Maybe have a service account to access this pipeline. And this will be triggered when you want to deploy your application to the App Store. So this one should be fairly straightforward. And it will basically, if you have a very healthy and a very good release pipeline, the purpose of deploy is just to get the code, version it, and send that to the Play Store. Simple as that. Things that you can do for the future to enhance your pipeline in general, this is probably my last slide. We have this code owner strategy. That means, again, we have a lot of teams. So the code owner strategy is something we added in our infrastructure. So if I work for the payment team, I create a feature which changes some of the features in accounting. My PR has to get approval from the accounting because they are the owner of the account module. They have to verify my code following their strategy. I don't change behavior of accounting to be able to migrate my code. So we have this code owner, and we have lots of Git hooks. And we also continue working on to improve our pipeline. Rebase before merge, and run large builds like your release full build, maybe in off-peak hour. And keep your report small, and always delete branches that are merged to keep your report small. That's it. Thank you.